Hi, I'm Donna Jordan from Jordan Fabrics. Today I'm going to show you how to make the Autumn Celebration Wreath quilt, and I'm going to make it in these exact colors. But I wanted to try it in other colors. Even though the title says Autumn Celebration, obviously you can make it in other themes. So here's a Christmas celebration, and I've used a border fabric like they show on the pattern here, but you can also do it with just fabrics. So let's go ahead, grab our fabrics, and get started. I've got a kit here. This has all the fabrics we need already cut in the amounts we need to make all the patches. Of course, you don't have to make it from a kit. We've got all the sizes you need, all the fabric amounts, so that you can cut this from your own yardage. First step is to pull all these open and then iron them nice and flat so we don't have any wrinkles before we cut. Everything is ironed up and I'm ready to cut. I can't give you all the sizes because it's not my pattern, but it's very clearly written and it's very easy to get the sizes you need. So one caution, the very first piece you have to cut has an odd size. It has a 3/16, 6 3/16. So I don't want you to panic because there's only 2 times when we have to cut that very unusual size. The size we need for this strip is 6 3/16. 3/16 is halfway between 1/8 and 1/4. So all I'm going to do is move over right here. I'm at 6 1/8. And then I'm going to move it over till I'm halfway between the 1/8 and the quarter mark. So it's just a little teeny movement. So I don't want you to worry when you see that odd size. There's just a few pieces that have an odd size. And hey, once the cutting is done, we never have to look at those sizes again. All of the cutting is done. Now, if you're cutting a different color combination than this one, you should probably make your own little fabric chart. So they have a fabric chart here with everything titled for the colors that are in this kit. But if you're making your own, make another chart. Also, when you cut each piece, there's a letter. So they call this piece F, this piece Q, this piece C. So as you cut, it tells you what letter goes with each piece. So you can take some little sticky pieces here and you can cut those and stick them on as you go if you find that helpful. I didn't actually use those the first time I made it. I just referred to the pattern and made sure I had the right size piece. But these labels are very useful, and I'm just using Avery sticky labels here. They're that size, but you can cut off little pieces and then label them as you go. Once everything is cut and labeled, we're ready to start sewing. This is made in parts. We're going to make a center section, then we're going to make 4 sections that go right around that center, and then 4 corners. So let's start with the middle. We're starting with A and B, and the back side of the B squares need to have a diagonal line drawn across the back of them. So I'm just going to use a light pencil line and draw it right like that. One of these is going to go on each corner, and we're just going to snowball the block. That means we're going to just stitch right along the line or just to the outside of the line. So that when we flip this over, all those edges should meet. And when you stitch just to that side of the line, because there's bulk there, it's a lot easier to get this just right. Fold those corners over, give it a nice steam press, and then we want to trim off the back 2 layers. So I'm just going to use scissors, and I'm cutting it so that I'm leaving a nice 1/4 inch seam allowance, and that way it won't be too bulky in the corners here. Next step is to make a strip unit with these green strips. I'm just putting the raw edges together, and then I'm just making sure I don't stretch the top or the bottom as I feed it into the machine. It's helpful if you finger press the seam allowance, and I want to press it toward the darker color. So for me, it's easier to put the light down and then peel it open toward the dark. Anchor it with my finger here, and then I'm just going to pull the pad of my finger or my fingernail right down that seam, and I'm kind of opening it like this as I go. That way I don't end up with any valleys here, and it's very easy to iron it. I went ahead and give just a little bit of pressing, and I'm going to do some sub-cutting here, and all we're going to do is cut this up, and then we're going to take these two at a time. We're just going to spin one around and stitch them back together. Let's add some triangles to these. It's the C fabric that we're going to be adding. We're going to add two of them, one on each side. One there and one there, so we can make a big triangle. So be sure to check that you've got your pieces turned like this and not like that. So I did keep checking the pattern to make sure they're going the right way. Just line up your corners here and leave the excess hanging off the bottom. This seam gets pressed away from the middle, and I'm going to do it right here. I'm not going to iron it right now. I'm just going to finger press it down like that. And again, line up this corner here. So you can line it up and stitch from here. I find it a little bit easier to flip it over and always start at the corner here. I'm going to trim the dog ears as I go. I'll trim that one off right now. We'll finger press this one away. And now we can get that little dog ear. And I'll repeat to make 4 of these. The big triangles, they will surround the center here. And the easiest way to get them on correctly is to mark the middle of these long sides. It's very easy to mark them. You can just fold it in half and make a little crease with your fingernail. So that will stay there long enough until I get to the sewing machine. Of course, you could put a little pencil mark on the back side if you want, but this will work pretty well for me. It's pretty easy to find the middle of this piece. So you can take a pin and put it right where those pieces come together. And then you can set that right down on that little crease mark, push everything together, and then pin it right there. Then we can straighten up this half and start sewing. And when I get to the pin, I'm going to take it out. And if you want your points to be very, very pointy and not stitched off, what you can do is when you sew right along here, let me get the light over there so you can see it a little better. If you can keep your stitching line a little bit to that side of that point there, then when you pull this open, because there's some bulk, you can still get a nice point. So we're going to press this seam toward the outside. So I'm just going to pull it over. Takes a little bit more pressing right where all that bulk is. And now I can add the other 3 sides. The center block is all done. And the next thing we're going to work on is the pieces that go on all 4 sides of the center. So we'll start with these triangles. We need 3 of the G triangles and 1 of the H triangles. And that's how they fit together. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch them up. Remember to take your stickers off first. If you don't, you can still get them out even if you stitch over them, because all those needle holes will make the paper tear away really fast. I already had that happen once today where I sewed right through that label, but it came right out without me having to restitch anything. I'm going to press the seam allowance toward the darker color here, and this is all bias, so you want to be a little bit careful when you press it open that you don't pull and distort it. So I'm just going to kind of smash it down a little bit, and then we'll add this just like we did earlier. Line up these corners here and let that excess hang off the bottom. Press toward the little triangle. Add this one, then we'll trim off all those dog ears and get it ironed up. These patchwork triangles will go on all 4 sides of the F blocks, and we're going to use the exact same method to stitch them on, marking the centers, that we did when we made this big block here. That's the beginning of the block. Next, we need to take these triangles and these squares, and we're going to stitch these on here and fold them over. So I'm going to go ahead and make a light pencil mark. These are going to add a nice little accent to these background triangles. So when we stitch this on here, and open it up, it's just going to make that triangle a little bit more interesting. These triangles will be stitched up with the C pieces, and we're also going to make some with the M. It's actually an M, but the M and C pieces. Those are done, and now we need to make some flying geese units. I haven't made them like this before, but we're just going to take 2 triangles that are already cut the shape we need, 2 little ones, and sew them onto 1 big one. I think it's easiest to sew this onto here first, and we can just line up the corners here. They will match exactly, and we'll have that little bit of extra hanging off all the way down here. But when you sew this on with the 1/4 inch seam, and press it toward the darker color, and I'm going to be a little bit careful because that's a bias seam. I don't want to stretch it. Now this piece will fit exact, so I'm going to line up these corners, flip the whole thing upside down, and once we get it stitched, it should all match up down here, and we'll just have a little bit of a dog ear to trim off. We've got 1 long line here. We've got a nice flying geese unit. Here's where all these pieces fit together. The flying geese unit is going to go on top of this block. These pieces will go on the right. These pieces will go on the left. And then we've got a couple of these J squares here that will go in the corner. So it's pretty easy to stitch all this up. We'll put these 2 together and sew them onto here, make 1 row there, and stitch it all together. Here's the 4 units that will go around the center here. So these are going to fit on all 4 sides, but we're still going to have to use the last remaining pieces we have there to make the corners. So we've got everything all around here, but this section here is missing. So let me show you where those pieces will go. The dark triangles, they're going to face each other here. We've got a printed square there. couple of light triangles here, plain squares, and one big square. So it's very easy to sew this together, so I'm going to go ahead and get those stitched up. I've got all the patchwork done, and next I want to work on the borders. The borders are mitered, so the easiest way to sew a mitered border on is to take the long border and fold it in half so you can find the center of it. So here's the center right here, and I'm going to put that center right in the center of this long side. So that's right here, and then I'll open it up and I will pin it along this edge. I'm going to be stitching a 1/4 inch from the edge, and I'm going to use the line on the pattern here to stitch right along there. But I don't want to stitch beyond a 1/4 inch from this, from both edges. So I'm going to make a little dot right here, which is a 1/4 inch from the edge. And that's where I'm going to start stitching. I'm just going to stitch here. I'm not going to stitch off the end. And I'm going to do the same thing at the far end, way down here. Make a mark a 1/4 inch from the end. And you might find it helpful just to put a pin right there to remind you to stop sewing right there. Here's that pencil mark right there. So I'm going to take the pin out and put this under the machine, and then put my needle down right in that spot. And then I'm going to sew this way, and I'm going to back tack a little. So I'm going to go forward, backwards, and then I'm going to continue stitching the border on along the whole side. And then I'll stop and start at the far end at that pencil mark as well. Here's that second mark right there. So when I get to that, you can even move your needle up and down by hand. You can turn the flywheel by hand. When you get to that mark, then back tack just a little to anchor it all. I'm going to use that same method for the side of the quilt here. Fold it in half, find the center, put the center in the center of the quilt, and we'll pin it along this edge, and we'll make those pencil marks again. I've got it all pinned on all the way along here, and the mark I make, which is a 1/4 inch from the edge there, right there, if we fold this back, we'll see this mark is actually right where that mark is. They're in the same spot. So I've folded this border out of the way, and I'm going to stitch down here until I get to that mark, and everything should then meet in the corner. And I'll show you what it looks like after I get it stitched. There's that dot. So when I get to that dot, I'm just going to back up a little. Now we've got borders on both sides, and they're both stitched to almost exactly the same spot. I could have gone maybe one more stitch right there, but we are going to make a diagonal seam here, and that will be our miter. I'll show you how to do that now. Here's how we successfully make the miter. We fold the quilt along the diagonal, and I'm going to match up the borders here. I'm going to make sure that I am folding right from this corner where I stitched, and then I'm going to line up these borders here, flatten everything out. Perfect. Okay, so what we want to do, move it around here. We want to get a line going straight across here. So you can line up with your quilt with the center of your fold here. I've got my ruler right along the edge here, and I'm just going to slide it down so that I'm all the way off the edge there. Now I'm going to draw a line, and I'm drawing from the dot I did earlier. So I don't know if you can see the dot, but I'm going to go all the way along here. There's the dot. And I'm going to pin it here, and I'm going to stitch right along that line. So if I stitch all the way along the line, and then when I get to that pencil dot, I will stop and back up. So it's right here. And you might want to go slow or even turn that flywheel by hand. Now when we open it up, everything should match up and it should lay nice and flat. So let's see how close we got. Just about perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and put the rest of the borders on, then we can get this loaded onto the quilting machine. I've got the quilt loaded on the machine, and it's time to pick a thread color. I'm fairly certain I'm going to use gold, but let's look at all these other colors just in case. The rust, that would show up a little bit on here, and that would be interesting because I'm going to do some sort of leafy pattern. We've got this nice warm brown, same thing, it will show up. This looked like a taupe. It's actually not matching as well as I would like, but I really think the gold, it's not going to show up much in the background, which is great. It's not going to show up on the patchwork. So I'm going to do that because we will still get a hint of the pattern just from the indentations of where the stitching is going. The pattern I'm going to quilt with is called Trip to New England, and that's because it's got these different shaped leaves, and I like the little swirls in between them. That should look really good on this quilt. The Autumn Celebration wreath quilt is all done, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. Of course, I love the border cut out of that fancy stripe. I like the way the leaves come over this here, and it almost looks like there's two borders there. It was very quick to make. I actually made the whole thing in one day, which is pretty quick considering you have to read the pattern, and there's a lot of little pieces, and I would recommend marking all the pieces like I showed you with those little teeny stickers. The quilting, it's very understated, but you can see these nice oak leaves there. I love the little swirls in between. And let's see, oh, I used a batik on the backside that has leaves, but then you can see these also, and that turned out really nice. It's about 61 inches square, so it makes a nice size for a table topper, a wall hanging, or a throw size quilt to put on your couch. Let's take a look at the Christmas version that I made. These are from Studio E, 'Tis the Season, and I did have the stripe border, which looks pretty good here with the poinsettias and that little border around it there. I love plaid bindings. Let's see what's on the back. Oh, it's a nice birdhouse print. Very cute, very cute. So this one, again, very easy to make. It's a good idea to have a strong contrast between all of these fabrics that go in the wreath and the background. But honestly, the different colors here, I wasn't sure if there was enough. I thought I might have needed more green. It might look too busy, but I think it looks great. So a really fun pattern to make, and it would look good in almost any color scheme. You wouldn't have to do a holiday color scheme. You could do blues or browns or greens. Just a really fun pattern to make. Now, if I had to pick, which one do I like better? I'm not even really sure. I like them both a lot, but I'd be interested to hear which one you like better, the autumn version or the Christmas version. You can leave a comment down below this video and let me know which is your favorite. We hope you liked watching our video tutorial today. We sure have fun making them. And at the end of every video, we like to do a giveaway. Today's giveaway is a pattern called Drunkard's Path. So these blocks are all made with a curve in the Drunkard's Path, and I did them all in circles for this one. It's very easy to enter the giveaway. Just click the link right below this video that says giveaway and put in your name and your email address, and you might be the next lucky winner. Now, if you like our tutorials and you want to support us, the best thing you can do is subscribe to our YouTube channel. That really helps us out. Happy quilting!